we are engaged. We're locked in a fight. I actually heard Nancy Pelosi say this, and I think that she's right. This tax plan that the Republican Party is getting ready to ram down our throats, it's economic Armageddon. It's trying to redo what Ronald Reagan did in the 80s and do even more, go above and beyond what Ronald Reagan did. They're seeking to cut corporate taxes from 35% to, I believe, 20%, so 15% there. They're seeking to flatten the base, flatten the brackets, and broaden the base, I believe is the exact phrase. And they are going to create deficits that are going to make everything else we've done before look like tiddlywinks. I'm not too concerned about the deficits because I think Democrats should learn that deficits actually really don't matter. Not that much. Our debt to GDP ratio does matter, which is affected obviously by the deficit. Yeah, I get that. But Republicans have shown that deficits don't matter to them. And what always inevitably happens is that when a Republican gets in and they behave in a fashion in which they don't care about deficits, the way Democrats try to prove that they're better economically is by being the actual deficit hawks. And so what's going to happen and I'm going on a tangent, but it's an important tangent, is what's going to happen is that if we continue to use the argument that deficits are bad, while Republicans are doing whatever the hell they want to do, increasing the deficits, then you're going to get a Democrat that gets into office who tries to prove that they're fiscally conservative and they're going to make cuts to programs that we need to reduce the deficit, right? All the while, Republicans are going to shift gears and say, oh, Democrats don't care about the deficit. If the Democrats really cared about the deficits, then they would cut this. They would cut that social safety net. They would cut Medicare. They would cut Medicaid, right? So it becomes a race to the bottom. And it's a game that the Democrats can never win because they're always going to be trying to prove that they are fiscally conservative, while every time Republicans get in office, they don't give a damn about fiscal conservatism. They don't care about deficits. They will wage an entire war on a credit card and then let the bill come due later. They do not care, right? And there's not a lot of evidence that suggests that if you get hold of the deficit that you're going to stimulate economic growth somehow in the future. There's not a lot of empirical evidence to demonstrate that. And if there is, somebody show me, because I've been looking. So I disagree with the argument that we should be concerned with deficits and use that as a means of outright attacking Republicans, unless we say, and honestly, America's so goddamn stupid. We can't even use nuanced arguments. But the real argument that we should argue here is Republicans are getting ready to show you that deficits don't matter and that they are okay with deficits so long as it's given to the rich and to the wealthy. They are okay with welfare so long as it's corporate welfare. They're okay with running huge deficits so long as that money goes to rich people and not poor people. And then show them all these years, Republicans have been running deficits and that money has been going to rich people and it's done nothing for the economy. But if we run these deficits and finance these programs and finance these safety net programs and finance all this, that's going to stimulate the economy because it's going to go to the poor and the middle class. And see, because that's not short enough, right? That's not short enough. That actually makes people have to think. And because we say things that make people have to think, Republicans get to just cut taxes. And they do it based on this one simple policy, this one simple concept, rather, that is actually wrong. And that saying is, if we cut taxes, we're going to stimulate economic growth. That's religion to them. If we cut taxes, we're going to stimulate economic growth. And we're going to raise more and we won't run deficits. And actually it's shorter. If we cut taxes, we're going to stimulate economic growth and it's going to pay for the tax cuts. That's their talking point. That has been their talking point since Ronald Reagan. And it was brought to Ronald Reagan by Arthur Laffer, the Laffer curve. And it has never been proven in empirical studies nor in practice. Ronald Reagan, and the only example they have is the boom that we saw after Ronald Reagan. But causation, correlation is not causation, right? Right? You just because they happen at the same time. Because here's two other data points, right? Two other data points is that 2001 and 2003, when George W. Bush cut taxes, we didn't see nearly enough economic growth to pay for the deficits that came as a result of it. But in 1993, when Bill Clinton raised taxes, we saw an economic boom that rivaled that of Ronald Reagan's economic boom. So there is no clear evidence, no clear empirical evidence, nor is there there are no clear economic studies, empirical studies that would demonstrate it through models, nor is there empirical evidence in terms of actual case studies that we can look at and say that every time you cut taxes, you stimulate economic growth. And this is what drives me crazy about this. Like, Bernie Sanders was in a debate with Eddie Monster. What's that man's name? Ted Cruz last week. He was in a debate with Ted Cruz last week, and he did not really nail. Bernie Sanders didn't really nail the problem with Ted Cruz's argument. And I want to. He really could have just nailed that dude to the cross, right? To the economic cross of neoliberalism and the Laffer curve. Because here's a question that you have to ask. At what point then, Ted? At what point Republicans will lowering taxes no longer stimulate economic growth? Ask them that question. Right? Because they say it as a statement of faith. If it's a statement of faith that all you have to do is cut taxes and you're going to stimulate economic growth. Cut taxes, stimulate. At what point? Is there any point? Because the obvious answer is there is a point where you're going to cut taxes and you're not going to get any more economic growth. You can't. What are you going to do? What are you going to do then, right? You're going to get to 0% tax rate. Do you still expect to be able to cut taxes and get more economic growth out of that? In that case, then the government shouldn't even charge taxes. The government should just print money and pay everybody, right? Negative tax rates. And so it's this religion around the Laffer curve that is a false religion, and they know it is, right? So it's not as though we have to prove it to them because they know it's voodoo economics. What we have to do is show that the things that you're going to lose, dummies, Republicans, the things that you're going to lose is healthcare, Medicare, Medicaid, any social safety net that you ever depended on. And don't act like you don't use food stamps, because you do. Owsley, Kentucky, 95% Republican, 95% white, has the greatest percentage of consumption of SNAP benefits in the entire country. You white Republicans know you need food stamps, poor asses, and you want to act like you don't need a safety net. But you're gonna champion this tax policy by Donald Trump because you bought into it that if you cut taxes, you're gonna stimulate economic growth. Well, Sway, even if that was true, what economic growth are you going to stimulate? Because you don't even make enough money to pay taxes. I don't think, I mean, this, I hate preaching to the choir sometimes. I know you guys know this. But this is why you need to become a patron. I'm sorry. This is why you need to become a patron, because I need to grow my platform a lot larger. I need to be able to say this to a bigger audience, because there's stuff that they're not saying on MSNBC that I don't think it's in. See, some people are going to say, Ben, they just don't say it because they're part of the system. And they don't always believe that, right? That's an excuse to make your enemies seem a lot more intelligent than they are, or the people who should be replaced. They may not be your enemy, but they are leaders, and they're the misleadership class. They're not as smart as you think that they are. I think that they honestly have not thought some of these arguments through, and they have simply bought into some of the things that they've been hearing. They don't even realize that they've been propagandized so much. I mean, case in point, Bernie Sanders wasn't even able to cut into that argument to expose the fallacy of that argument, right? He wasn't even able to pull up the fact that George W. Bush lowered taxes, and we saw anemic economic growth. He didn't point that out. He didn't point out the fact that Bill Clinton raised taxes in '93, and we saw tremendous economic growth. And you know Bernie Sanders ain't bought and paid for. So I think that we honestly have to get a better breed of politician. we're gonna need, what does the Joker say? We're gonna need a better breed of criminals around here, right? Right? We're gonna need a better breed of politicians, a better breed of commentators, of commentary, because they are really basing their knowledge. I don't know what the heck, I don't even know what they're basing it on. Well, I mean, what books are you reading? What university do you? Well, they went to Harvard School of Business. They went to all of these institutions that teach the same Chicago School of Economic Theory that never allows you to actually challenge that. Hell, it's the same, but it's the same goddamn school. I had the same education in terms of the theory. The theory has been trickled down literally from all the Ivy League schools to all the average Joe schools like I went to. Like, we learned the same lessons that if you cut taxes, you're going to stimulate economic growth. But if you look at the curve, you're going to realize there's going to be a point where you can't cut taxes anymore. Is that still going to be your answer? Sway. And because they can't expose the fallacious nature of some of these basic ass arguments, we are still arguing the same thing 30 years. How old am I? I'm damn near 40, right? I think I'm 36. I lost track. I'm 37. And they've been arguing the same thing since Ronald Reagan, since 1981. I mean, the Democratic, the DNC, everybody's like, well, Ben, they're all bought and paid for by corporate. No, not all of them. Because what that does is that allows you to just make enemies of them and say that they are the target. But you know what? I mean, I look at the Green Party economic platform, and I've actually talked to some Green Party candidates, and I've talked to people, and some of their solutions sound exactly like the solution of the Democratic Party economically, and they really don't have any answers to this basic false religion of Laffer economics, trickle-down economic theory. If you cut taxes, you stimulate economic growth. But we saw that wasn't true during the credit crunch, right? Because the idea is if companies have more disposable income, and disposable income is enough, we'll leave it there, right? If companies have more disposable income, then they're automatically going to invest, which is going to create more jobs, and it's going to stimulate economic growth. But that's never been the case, right? Because there's a group of people who, when they get money, they do spend that money. And then there's another group who gets money and they hoard that, and they hoard it like cash, right? Literally, they sit on it because they've consumed everything that they need to consume. They've invested everything that they're willing to invest. They weren't making decisions based on tax rates whether or not they were going to invest. They wanted to make some money. They were going to invest, and now we've given them even more money. We've given them even more money. You know what they do? That group of people, the wealthiest, they sit on it. They don't cycle it through the economy. They don't spend it. They don't invest it. They sit on it. And that's what happened in the credit crunch. The companies had $2 trillion. $2 trillion that they could have loosened up in order to stimulate the economy. But they didn't. They sat on it because it was more profitable for them to sit on their revenue, on their profits, than it was for them to invest it. But then there's an entirely different group of people that if you put $100 in that person's hand, they're going to spend that $100, which absolutely is the driver of our economy. Our economy, I believe, what is it, 75% consumer economy? If you put money in the middle class's hand, there are going to be more demand for jobs because we're going to go out there and spend it. You know why? Not because we just want to, but because we have to. Because we're living paycheck to paycheck, because we don't make enough money to actually keep anything. So if the government put $10,000 in the hand of every household, of every middle class household in the country, every bit of that $10,000 will be spent. You know why? Because we're still catching up on bills. Because that thing that we had to buy that we haven't bought, that's that treatment that we had to pay for, we haven't paid for yet, right? It's a car we haven't been riding on busted struts for the last 2 years. God damn it. That's why I love, I'm telling my business now, right? Telling my business now. We finally got a new car, but I got a second car that we rode on busted struts for 2 goddamn years. You know why? Because we didn't have any extra money to get a $1,600 job. You put a $10,000 into the hand of the middle class, boom, boom, boom. That's going to be spent. You put $10,000 into the hand of the wealthiest, it don't mean nothing to them. They're going to sit on it. Now you tell me, Ted Cruz, who's going to really drive economic growth? The middle class, the working class, giving money to them, and they're going to go out there and spend it. And when I go to the car dealership, or when I go to the automotive center and they fix my car, that's a demand. That's a new job that I just created. If me and 100 other people go into that same place, they're going to have to hire new people. That's economic drivers right right there. That's economic growth. And yet we are still arguing the same ridiculous false religion of, well, if you just cut taxes, then we're going to stimulate the economy. Dumbasses. John Hill says, Ben, you're being naive. Bernie is not that good at debating. Well, that's why we need a better breed of politician. We need a better breed of debaters. It's time for a new generation to get out there and give these motherfuckers hell. Damn it. I can't be your politician because I cuss too much. But damn it, you get somebody else who got the pedigree and look good and everything else. They nice and tall and they all slim and they all that good stuff. Get them so long as they can keep it real and they actually understand. I mean, somebody out there. There's got to be somebody out there who looks the part, who has the pedigree and actually has this ability to do economic jujitsu with these, debating jujitsu with these people. And then just leave the commentating stuff up to us. Those of us who look good, on the radio, leave that to us. But you guys, and I'm not saying this for you to just become a patron, but goddamn it, go over there and become a patron. Patreon.com/the BPD show. Because unless we get words like this out, then we're going to be arguing the same thing in 30 years. And at that point, I ain't even gonna care. I'm not even gonna care. If we still arguing all you gotta do is cut taxes and you stimulate the economy. If we're still saying that in 30 years, then I'm gonna be somewhere on somebody's boat, smoking a cigar, fishing. That's what I'm gonna do. So in other words, it's up to you guys. It's up to all of us. We all have to do our part, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.